with this recent development where the President Bola Tinubu has directed that the immediate slashing, he directed the immediate slashing of the expenditure of official travels for domestic and international by 60%. That directive was handed down by President Bola Tinubu on Tuesday and was contained in a statement signed by the presidential spokesman Ajuri Ngelale. Mr. Ngelale says the development will affect the office of the President, Vice President, First Lady, ministers and heads of agencies. This directive also entails that the huge security details that follows the President around on local trips will also be reduced and allow the security agencies in the states of that the President will visit to handle security arrangements for the President. He also said every minister is limited to having just 4 members of staff on any foreign trip, while heads of agencies are limited to just 2. These are the number of persons approved by the President for federal and states entourage. President has 20 persons, while Vice President will have 5 persons. First Lady will also have 5 persons. For local trips, the President will have 25 persons as entourage, and the Vice President will have 15 persons, while the First Lady will have 10 persons.
His Excellency President Bola Tinubu has, by his most recent directive, approved a massive cost-cutting exercise that will cut across the entire federal government of Nigeria and the offices of the President himself, the Vice President, and the office of the First Lady. It will be conducted in the following fashion. 1, the official trips that will be undertaken within the country, that is, when Mr. President or the Vice President travels to any state within the country, the massive bills that accrued due to allowances and ESTA code for security detail coming from Abuja, going and traveling into those states, will be massively cut due to the directive of the President that the security outfits within states, whether it be police, DSS, or branches of the military, will frontline his protective detail when he travels to those states.
Well, we would recall that last year when the President went for COP27, there was an uproar with regards to the number of persons that were part of that entourage. Well, perhaps this is a reaction to the number of persons, although the numbers were clarified. But I also guess that the government is looking at cutting down on spending.
Which has been an issue, ever since the Tinubu administration emerged, they came on board following their inauguration. That had been one of the yearnings. I remember on this set, we all spoke about it, and I remember that was one of the things that you also found paramount, that the government would need to, everybody knows the state of the economy right now, and so cutting cost of governance is stating the obvious. And of course, things kept building up. The president emerged with his list of ministers. There was concern as to whether the government heeded the concerns of Nigerians. And of course, that COP27 trip came about, and then there were a lot of clarifications here and there by the government. And now this, I think it also shows, some form of listening by the government. And he has said it's not a suggestion, but a directive. And so it's going to cut across board. And well, people are also saying that, of course, now is the time for Nigerians to also continue to watch out, and see how well these directive is going to be implemented. Right. And of course, see how it will trickle down to other parts of governance.
Absolutely. Of course, there are Nigerians who are, like you have rightly mentioned, are waiting to see if they will follow through. Although Ajuri Ngelale, the media aide to the President, has said that anyone who does not want to follow this directive will perhaps have themselves to blame, so to speak. Yeah. So it's about they following this directive to the latter, because we have seen the number of aides the President has had to employ, not just ministers now. We have seen several persons being employed by the President, appointed, and all of it. And that is also another matter. It is not just about cutting down on the number of persons who move around with him because of Esther Code and all of it. We're also looking at how to further reduce the cost of governance. The Nigerians are saying, you have asked us to tighten our belts, even though you understand the situation with us, but let us also see you take certain steps. Perhaps this is a step in the right direction, but Nigerians want to see more. But my concern with this is the matter of security. States, having to handle the security detail of the president, and I'm wondering how that will really play out if some states will be able to really handle these matters of security such that it is not compromised at the end of the day.
Well, that's also a legitimate concern, but one could also argue that each state or all the states are not on the same level of in terms of capacity and all of that.
Absolutely.
So depending on the security concerns that the president's security detail will give him before embarking on a particular trip, to any state, I think that will also determine. After all, it's a federal entity, so to speak. We have the army and other entities, other agencies in all the states.
Who are supposed to collaborate.
Who are supposed to collaborate. So depending on the state, if it's coming to Lagos, for instance, we already have the army and other agencies who are situated here. So depending on the state and what they project in terms of the, the risk assessments and all of that, that will determine the security detail that will boost what the president or who the president is coming with. But, well, I guess that, all these things will have to be, there may be some adjustments, especially for the sake of security.
Yes.
There may be need for some adjustments. But
Absolutely.
the other hand, the other part that we know of is that the regular personnel or the regular people that accompany the president, the regular personalities that accompany the president will have to be reduced. According to what he has said.
Now we'll see how people would want to lobby. So if you have the gift of lobbying,
perhaps turn by turn, or
yes, we will have to be reshuffling things now, because you cannot necessarily leave some people to go on these trips and leave others behind all the time. So we have to have some balance at the end of the day. And I hope that everyone understands what the government is trying to achieve. And I also understand that it seems the government is trying to win the confidence of a lot of Nigerians. Listening to every issue that we see complaints about, or there's an uproar or conversation about, and the government is saying, okay, perhaps we need to take certain steps just for these persons to understand and believe that we hear them and will do things that align with what they are clamoring for at the end of the day. But the question now is how far will we go with this?
Nigerians are saying this is not the first time they've heard about
they've
heard about this, and it didn't appear at the time that anything had changed. The same level of waste was what they saw in previous administrations when they said they had to tighten their own belt to show example. But then this is a different administration.
Yes.
So give it to them. So far they've been on the spotlight, and we see what's happening now with two of the ministers, less than 6 months or thereabout, since their inauguration, and we'll continue to monitor.
We can only keep our fingers crossed to see what happens. It's been an interesting year so far. Anyway, let's bring you the news update at this time. Right, the Supreme Court has reserved its judgment on an appeal filed by the governor of Plateau State, Caleb Mutfwang, challenging the nullification of his election by the Court of Appeal, rather. A 5-member panel of the Apex Court, led by Justice Iyan Okoro, reserved the appeal for